We are moving to the seventh plenary section. So I would like to invite the chief guest of sixth plenary section, that is Dr. Sharon Shahjahan Navomi, and I hope she is here. She is an assistant professor of gender studies at Asian University for Women, and Dr. Naomi gives talks on women's rights and feminism in national and international platforms, and she has publication and research works in a number of areas, including violence against women, women empowerment, feminism, anti-feminism, backlash, indigenous rights, human rights and humanitarian law, refugee rights, peace and conflict resolution, post-colonial knowledge, and environmental justice. She completed PhD from Murdoch University, Australia, and she was awarded Australian Leadership Award 2010 for pursuing Masters of Arts in Human Rights at Curtin University, Australia. In 2019, she received DHS Fellowship from USAID and Kernel Climate Online Fellowship. So I welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really great to hear so many insightful sessions since morning. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity. So I'm going to talk about decolonial feminism, and I would like to argue that use of autoethnography, which is an emerging research method after postmodern knowledge phase, can enrich decolonial feminism in terms of making it more located and contextualized, because decolonial feminism originated in Latin American context. In this regard, I would like to use the example of Bangladesh in terms of Islamophobia and how this category has been used against feminist and secular intellectuals, and wanted to capture the complexities of this category in the context of Bangladesh. So decolonial feminism provides a space for marginalized and non-Western women to redefine feminism based on their experiences and challenges against the dual process of patriarchy within and outside. As an emerging theoretical concept by Lugones in 2008 and 2010, who is a Latin American feminist scholar, decolonial feminism empowers the silent voices of women from the global south, indigenous groups, immigrant and black community, so that they can become agents in the production of the knowledge that is about them. Decolonial feminist theory is grounded on post-colonialism, post-colonial feminism, and decolonizing knowledge to develop rigorous critique of Western knowledge and representation of non-Western categories in feminism. It aims towards breaking the hierarchy of white Western supremacy in interpreting women's experience and bring equality between different perspectives. In this paper, I would like to examine decolonial feminism, its possibilities and challenges using autoethnographic voice. I would like to argue that autoethnographic voice can enhance the possibilities of decolonial feminism by transforming it to be more inclusive, situated, embodied, and endowed with multi-perspective. In this regard, I will make a critical inquiry about the use of the word or category Islamophobia as a fixed and homogeneous category in Bangladesh. I would argue that how situated and contextualized and localized decolonial feminist narrative of Islamophobia can give us a deeper understanding about this category without misunderstanding and the risk of shattering feminist solidarity. Based on this particular example, I will draw a general picture on the relationship between global politics and decolonial feminism and propose that in a current world of polarization, autoethnography can offer a space to understand each other, going beyond binary perspective and move towards a multi-layered feminist solidarity. Autoethnography, which makes an inquiry into the connection between personal account and larger political context, can disrupt the colonizing aspects of knowledge. Autoethnography can make decolonial feminism contextualized and localized that are required for its growth and integration into mainstream feminist discourse. I came to know about decolonial feminism and decolonialization of knowledge while doing PhD. My PhD thesis was inspired by these thoughts and written to contribute decolonization of knowledge through including non-Western voice, narrative, and perspective. Definitely, I never meant to create another binary anti-Western category. Rather, I voice for anti-colonial, non-binary, and in-between approaches to create alternative pathways for knowledge. In this journey, autoethnography has been very useful. Superiority of Eurocentric perspective and representation of others are at the heart of Western colonial ways of producing knowledge. This colonial discourse is often referred to authoritative efforts for maintaining European intellectual lineage, styles, and narratives rooted in Greek and Roman classical ways. The intention behind this authoritarian approach to knowledge is to exclude others in the name of non scientific knowledge. Difficulties in speaking in a colonial discourse is felt deeply by non-white third world women who are confined within the category of victim and without any agency. Apart from critique from post-colonial scholars, Western discourse has also been subject to feminist critique due to its rigid characteristic and disconnection from spontaneous experience, emotion, real-life language, and communication. Autoethnography can give the space to speak from the position that refuses to be colonial to meet the demand of authoritarian policing in academia. While presenting decolonial feminism as resistance against coloniality of power within feminism, Lugones refers to approach capitalist world system approach to power and the use of modernity. Decolonial feminism is the possibility of overcoming the coloniality of gender. Modernity here indicates the attempts to control by denying the existence and the challenge of the existence of other worlds with different ontological presuppositions other than a particular category set up by Western discourse. It is definitely not a pre-modern category. To make it more clear, I borrow what Dussel say about modernity. Modernity appears when Europe affirms itself as the center of the world history, that is, that it inaugurates the periphery that surrounds this center is consequently part of its self-definition. Decolonial feminism takes into account other critiques of modernity, such as postmodernist criticism of modern reason as a reason of terror, as said Mignolo, because of the irrational myth that it conceals. Modernity has both top sides and darker sides. The darker sides that is constituted by colonial relation is a concern for decolonial feminism in terms of gender and feminism. Critique of complex system of colonialization, capitalism and heterosexualism and patriarchy are the heart of the practice of decolonial feminism. Decolonial feminist tasks begin by seeing the colonial difference and empathic resistance against colonial epistemological habit of erasing the difference. It decenters Euro-American position in knowledge and way of feeling and being in feminist discourse, emphasizes on context, local and indigenous epistemologies, knowledge and subjectivities as a part of feminist politics. Using autoethnographic voice, decolonial feminism could be examined with its possibilities and challenges. Inclusion of autoethnographic voice can enhance the possibilities of decolonial feminism to be more inclusive. I propose that in a current world of polarization, autoethnography can offer a situated decolonial feminist politics that is required to understand some issues. Currently, it is influenced by Latin American thinkers and Latin American context. As a result, its resistance against coloniality and racism is more profound than other oppressive structures like religious extremism or conservatism. Decolonial feminist framework has been useful for resistance against Islamophobia in terms of gender in Western countries. It is effective to identify Islamophobia under a structure of patriarchy, capitalism, racism, and colonialism. Islamophobia refers to stigmatization and othering of Muslim community and showing them inferior in comparison to West. This category became widely used after 9/11, especially in referring to othering of Muslim immigrants and citizens in the Western countries. Later, it was expanded to particular situation of non-Muslim countries as well as the countries where Muslims are not in majority. How Islamophobia is connected to feminism. Its usage was mainly connected to stigmatizing Muslim women on the basis of their lifestyle, especially veil. However, according to Saba Mahmood, Islamophobia in terms of Muslim women is more than a veiling issue. It is more about othering the community from racial and colonial mentality in the Western countries. Muslim women are depicted as a dependent, need saving, and conservative, and they are considered to be conservative. But in this regard, I must say this location of this Islamophobic discourse is problematic and not universal in nature. The main context of this discourse is in Europe, where veil has been subject to legislations. However, the response came from the location that has prioritized certain geography, such as Egypt or Muslim women in the West, that has been widely used in post colonial feminist discourse to resist Islamophobic discourse against veil. The central claim of post colonial feminism against gendered Islamophobia in Europe and other Western countries was that including difference do not change the fact the universal model of how to be a woman, even a feminist woman, is still dominated by white liberal way of being women. Therefore, white feminism is easily co-opted into an Islamophobic discourse by developing grand narratives of personal freedom that are based on experiences of white women and projected onto Muslim women who choose to veil themselves. As a result, feminist politics can be used as a justification for oppressive policy against Muslim women. French feminist Françoise Vergès explained how the European feminism has allyship with new liberal projects to implement civilizing mission among the societies and women of the South, especially among Muslims. She considered it as a new colonialist style. Her opinion is again in the context of France and its policy towards hijab. The problematic side of the resistance of narratives on veiled women and Islamophobia is its heavy reliance on certain location and tendency to create a counter-narrative of choice from the Muslim women. This argument cannot be applied to many Muslim countries or contexts where complexities of choice are not based on a binary model of religious devotion versus oppression. In this regard, I would like to take the example of Bangladesh, where I am from. Although it has a Muslim majority, the main principle of the state includes secularism, which has root in liberation war. This secularism was definitely not a European model of secularism, but it is a homegrown version where different religious identities could exist harmoniously and no single religion would overtake. Since the date of the founding father of Bangladesh in 1975, this secularism began to face serious hurdles in both public and private sphere. A process of building of a religious state began to be shaped. However, in terms of women dressing and modesty, traditional dress like shari or selwar kameez has been encouraged. Hijab has not been considered to be a cultural dress in Bangladesh, although women who wear it never face any structural discrimination or collective attack for their preference, just like what happens in France. The cultural trend of women dress and modesty started to be changed in last 5 years, and hijab became the dominant trend in women clothing and standard for judging modesty. There was no particular research or approach to find out the reason of this change, although some sporadic opinions said that it has been increased with the high mobility of women and participation women from all classes in the public sphere. However, this opinion disregarded the rise of religion-based nationalism and integration of new conservative values into the mainstream Bangladeshi culture and politics. Use of religion-based national identity to dominate discourse on intellectual relation and national politics can be affiliated with the growing trend of wearing hijab among women from all classes. Therefore, nature of reasons of high rise of using hijab can be multi-layered, very dynamic, and subject to change. In social media, religion based women rights and religion based nationalistic discussion have become highly popular among young generation in comparison to discourse that do not follow the trend. The category of West has become a term to be used against the opinion that refuse to enter into this popular religion based discourse. This trend is not confined to any political premise now, rather, it is in the process of integration into the mainstream political and social discourse. Blogger and women celebrities who often come to media in Western dress or even in shari are openly criticized for not wearing Islamic dress. Where is your hijab has become a popular misogynist linguistic instrument against feminists. As a woman, I never faced any pressure from my family to wear hijab or cover head, although pressure for being modest was always there. It is same for my cousin, friend and women that I know. But the increasing rise of religion-based national identity politics and popularity of religion-based discourse have an impact on our choices. Desire, convenience, and privilege to look good, pious, and modest to the community play a complex role in choosing hijab besides devotion to religion. In this context, the use of Islamophobia in Bangladesh based on the experience of North America or European context have dire consequences. Often it has been used by anti-feminist groups, including the nationalist one, to target intellectual, blogger, and feminists with secular opinion on gender equality. Besides, the present of Digital Security Act and some of its restriction in terms of religion-based discourse can make the misuse of Islamophobia for political and anti-feminist purpose. Islamophobia in the context of Bangladesh has become more like a weapon to attack feminist women and silence the voice of the critique of orthodox religious values and ideology. Just few months ago, when I shared a social media post on how some groups are using religion to promote wife submissiveness to husband or to attack religious minorities. I was criticized by my Facebook friends not on the basis of an extremist value but on the ground of resistance against Islamophobia. I was amazed to see how the concept is imported from Muslim experience in the West and thrown to the Muslim community in the Islamic countries without any deconstruction and examination of its complexities. My experience had made me realize that how we need to redefine and deconstruct Islamophobia based on the context, history, rise of extremist discourse, and nationalistic politics. Under decolonial feminism, we could see the category of Islamophobia as a more heterogeneous, diverse, fluid, and political as well. Decolonial feminism could link the category with history, war, coloniality, and neoliberalism. At the same time, it can raise a critique against its random and political usage to silence the voice of secular narrative in some context. One way to develop resistance against Islamophobia and its misuse is to work on alternative epistemologies for more complex understanding of the experiences of non-Western women. It should not be confined to the critique of the darker side of modernity that has silenced other possible cultural, epistemological, and spiritual option, but also should be expanded towards its misuse through inviting more autoethnographical notes and examining on how one's situatedness plays a role against resistance against Islamophobia or resistance against its misuse. In order to widen the potential of in decolonial feminism, we need to appreciate multiplicity in the struggles of women everywhere in the world without binary model of evolution. Since the emergence of postmodernism, autoethnography stands as a new location and space for the voice, language, and narrative of others, of the marginalized voice. As a research method, autoethnography can unpack the crisis of representation of the time, the complexities in the interpretation of embodied and intersubjective knowledge, and multiple aspects of consciousness and self-consciousness that are personally or politically and emancipatory. There lies its potential to offer something new to understand both the possibilities and challenges of decolonial feminism on many issues, such as Islamophobia. Autoethnography can present a space where speaking from multiplicity, heterogeneity, plurality, and indeterminacy of meaning and meaning making become possible and visible. Following Dorothy Smith's vision, autoethnography can be a useful way to enter into large area of social and political context through cultivating knowledge on women experience. These are the possibilities of autoethnography to decolonizing knowledge for feminist purposes. Autoethnography that believe in the value of individuality and particularity can be a way to make the decolonial feminism more rooted to the diversity and resistant not only against colonial and racial capitalist patriarchal structure but also extremism and new form of conservatism. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And this is the time for discussion. Those who have any questions, kindly ask now.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Uh, First of all, I congratulate you being a Bangladeshi because still all over the world it is widely accepted that the women from Bangladesh are very less marginalized as in the comparison of the rest of the Islamic countries. So it is a very good sign. But I would eager to know from you how you locate the upliftment of the Bangladesh women in the comparison of rest of the neighbor Islamic countries while encountering the modernity, social modernity around the globe.
Thank you. I think it's a very good question. The answer is will not be very conclusive and linear. It has so many paradoxes because if you see the root of Bangladesh, it is situated just beside India, and if you see its root, it is geographically and historically it cannot be linked to Middle East or other Islamic countries. Same goes for Indonesia as well. As a result, what happened, these countries actually face lots of heterogeneity and paradoxes that other Middle East countries do not face. So it is true that female have lots of participation in public sphere and private sphere, but it is also true anti-feminist backlash is quite high. Mostly this rise of empowerment happened because of government constant interest on this issue. No matter which government was in power, they always tried to increase the rate of women empowerment. One of the reasons was their dependency on foreign aid. But later, when Bangladesh moved from foreign aid, the present government also had a very active interest to increase women high rate in government offices, in universities, and everywhere. So, in terms of women participation in employment and education, it is quite promising. But when it comes to violence, anti-feminist backlash, or unpaid care work, the situation remains the same. But currently, the conflict and tension in terms of anti-feminist backlash is quite interesting, and probably it will unfold in coming days more.
Wish you all the best, ma'am, to face the Islamophobia successfully and
Thank
to
you.
re-establish the well-being of the women. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
Okay, those who have any other questions, kindly ask now. I hope there is no more questions. So it was really an insightful section, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for accepting our invitation and being a part of this 3-day virtual conference. Thank you so much.